Okay, so you guys have been asking for it for a really long time now, and today we're going to dive deep into two-story ArchiCAD architectural design. What's going on, guys? My name's David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about two-story architectural design in ArchiCAD 25. If you're brand new to this channel, on this channel we talk about architecture and technology every single Monday, and soon, most likely twice a week. We're going to be ramping up these videos because this channel is growing every single day, so thank you so much for your support. Today we're specifically focusing on how we can create two-story architectural design very quickly, very easily, and the fundamental basics of what you need to know to be able to do any two-story design that your heart desires. Once ArchiCAD has loaded up completely, the first thing we're going to be doing is pressing Control-7 to open up our Storey settings. Because we're doing a two-story design, this is where it is absolutely critical. I'm going to insert a story below. I'm going to call it footings, and I'm going to go minus 172 millimeters because that's approximately how big a slab with a footing is. I'm going to make my next story 2745, and then I'm going to insert a ground ceiling story. That ground ceiling story can be anything from 200 mil to 600 mil, depending on what you're really planning on doing. So in this instance, let's say we're going to have a concrete floor with a drop ceiling in some areas. So we're probably going to need about 200 millimeters for that concrete floor. And then we're going to need an additional 300 millimeters under that if we want any of our services to be running in bulkheads. Above that, we want our first floor, which is again going to be 2745. And then above that, we want our first ceiling. So it doesn't really matter what we do in the first ceiling above that, because that's just going to keep going on and on forever. We just want to dictate that as a number above our actual existing first floor. I'll also type in ground floor so it stays relatively consistent. Now personally, I like to untick all of those on the side for elevations. We're not going to get into that today, but it's just something I enjoy to do. Next, we're going to click OK, and as you can see, we have our footings, ground floor, ground ceiling, first floor, all appearing right here. Now let's start by going to our ground floor, double clicking on that layer. Nothing's going to happen because we have nothing drawn. We're going to make it a very simple tutorial. We're not going to go into too much architectural design. I'm going to make it relatively nice, but we're not going to spend all day on internal fit outs, room layouts, and all that. Let's start by selecting our wall tool. Next, we want to make sure we're on our wall external layer. We have our geometric method shaped continuous line selected. If you don't, press and hold, and you can change what sort of shapes you're using and need. Next, I'm going to come across to my wall structure, click all the way down, and find my stud partition. I'm going to make this a timber frame house, so 90mm stud partition's perfect. So to start drawing the first bit of our house, we click once. I'm going to hold shift to draw a perfectly dead straight line, and then press the D button to be able to activate my distance measurement. I'm going to type in 4,000 for 4 meters, click enter, go back down, again, shift D, let's go out 2 meters, again, shift D, and let's go out 6 meters on this side here. Finally, I'm just going to drag it back, I don't know, shift D, 15 meters, again, holding shift, aligning it with the edge of our house, clicking OK, and clicking on the mouse again. I've never used ArchiCAD before. If we go into show all in 3D up the top, you'll see that automatically our walls have been created in 3D, and we're already starting to build something out of absolutely nothing. Now, to make your life a hell of a lot easier in the future, if we click once, select all of it, and then press Command T. What I want to do here is go to my first floor home story and make sure that's 0, not 500. So our ground floor walls go all the way from the base of our slab all the way up past the slab of the first floor, so we don't have to do additional cladding for absolutely no reason. For now, that's all we have to do. We're just going to press OK. As you can see, those walls jumped up straight away, that extra 500 millimeters. And if we were to go back into Command 7 to open up our Storey settings and change our ground ceiling to 5 meters for whatever reason, if we clicked OK, they would automatically jump up as well. So the best thing about that is coming back in, changing that back to 500. They drop back down. If your construction method changes, if your ceiling levels change, if anything changes, you don't have to go in checking every single wall one by one to make sure they're aligned to the correct new slab height. Now we're going to come back into our ground ceiling. So we're double clicking on ground ceiling, right clicking on our ground floor and going show as trace reference so we can see our ground floor below. What we're going to do here is come into our slab tool and we're going to change our slab to something a little bit different. So as you can see here, we have some pre-made concrete and timber floor slab finishes. I'm just going to go with this 250 millimeter concrete slab finish. Go Command T. It's a little bit bigger than what we originally anticipated, but that's okay. Next, we're just going to simply draw inside of our wall settings here. So now if we come back into our 3D option, we'll see that that floor is sitting perfectly in line with these walls. Now, from an actual construction point of view, the wall will actually sit underneath the floor, and then the next wall will sit on top of the floor, so there will be a discontinuation like this that you can actually see. But for architectural visual purposes, I personally extend the walls all the way up so we don't have to change the sides of our slab. Later on, we detail that in section completely differently, but that's a whole other tutorial. Now, let's go back to our ground floor. I'm thinking I'm gonna make this a little bit different. So just to show you guys some additional information, if we click on all our walls, they're gonna be joint like they're grouped. So what we need to do is actually press Alt and G to ungroup them. And then once we click it again, you can see it's just one item selected rather than all the walls. Next, we can press Control or Command D to be able to actually move that object, run it all the way across this other wall. And let's say that's going to be a bedroom instead of a main living. So we'll reduce that to 3 meters from that wall to that wall. And by simply pressing the minus button at the end, it'll automatically do the maths for you. Now, if we click Escape and I hold the Control button, our little scissors tool appears and I can click on that wall to cut it back in line with where I already moved the second wall. Additionally, I want to join these two walls. So if I click once, click twice, these two walls will be highlighted. I can press Command or Control I and it will automatically intersect or join those two walls. As you can see, that trace reference is still on below, so it's showing us what it was before. So if I just pan across and zoom, it'll disappear completely, or we can come up to here and just untick our trace reference so we're not confused by the same information being delayed and lagging. Now that we have our base floor pretty much done, let's press our Alt button again, select one of these walls so we're copying the settings across, come up to our first floor, and then we can see that we have our ground floor trace reference still on. I'm going to draw a simple box by simply clicking around on top and above of that story below, and then I'm going to come back into my 3D option and see what's going on. So as you can see, there's a few things that are wrong in this 3D scenario. First of all, this floor slab we haven't adjusted to our new walls. So we can do that in 3D by simply clicking on this slab, clicking on the blue line, coming across to offset edge and running it all the way back in line to the edge of our wall. And we want to make sure that we're on the inside so it's the same as everything else. Next, I'm going to click on the first floor walls. I'm going to go again, Alt G, so it groups those items again so I don't have to go through and click each wall individually. Command or Control T to open up the settings. I'm going to do a whole command palette in this video underneath my floating head here because you guys have been requesting and asking what are the commands. So I'm just really trying to improve these videos to make it as easy for you guys to follow along. So I hope you do appreciate the effort that goes in to making all these commands, watching this video over and over again to make sure that all the commands are put in properly. Anyway, back to this. We want to change our not linked top story whatsoever. We just want to make that 2745 and press OK. So our walls drop back down. Quick little interlude, as always, there is some great links down in the description below, guys, if you want to check them out. As a specific example, there is some construction checklists in my digital download section of my website. You will find them extremely useful, especially if you're a student or an architect starting out in practice. They are fundamental for being able to send out drawings confident, knowing that everything that was meant to be on that drawing has been put on it. So if you are somebody that is starting out in architecture, make sure you check out the links. There is a whole bunch of great content down there, including a Discord group chat where architects, students, and all sorts of professionals from around the world are joining every single day and helping each other grow. Now, obviously, we can have a roof on this house and it could be a variety of different options. We could go for a Hampton style, we could go for a modern style, we can do 1,000,001 different architectural styles. I did make a video talking about different architectural elevations in a very simple, quick method. So I'll link that above as well if you want to check that out after. Today, I'm just going to focus on a little bit of architectural elements, probably a concrete roof, keeping it very slim, keeping it very minimal and elegant. So to be able to create that, let's start by going to our ground floor, and I'm basically going to create a wraparound floating roof effect. Now, the easiest way to create this is simply by copying this wall across, dragging it out to the edge, and we're going to make this 250 millimeters thick because that is how thick our floor is above. Next, I'm going to press Control or Command and the up button to move one story up. So as you can see in this palette here, if I go back to down, it'll go to ground floor, 1 up, ground ceiling, 2 up, first floor. So we'll come back to our ground ceiling. Now I'm going to copy this slab across, and instead of stopping in front of the wall, I'm actually going to come all the way out in this instance to create some sort of balcony here and then drop back down. I do want to extend that about 500 millimeters past as well. So the same way as we did it in 3D, click on that line, offset edge, start typing in 500, and then Command down. I'm also going to bring this back out another 500 by simply following the same steps we did before, which was Command D and then pressing the D button to type in 500. And finally, to bring these back in line with this wall, I'm going to ungroup them, Alt G, clicking our Move node and simply holding the Shift button, click once, drag back in line. What I'm going to do now is highlight this bottom blade wall, go Command C, up, and Command V or Control V, depending on what system you're on. Select that, Control D to be able to move it, drag it all the way across and click it on this side. So now if we come back into our 3D, we'll see that we're starting to create this wraparound roof looking blade wall. What I have done incorrectly is I haven't gone all the way across, so I'll click on that section there, and I want this to be pure concrete. So if we open up the slab settings by pressing Command T, changing it to a structure basic composition, and then changing this to just pure concrete, clicking OK, we lose that timber on top. We can get rid of that floor over there by dragging it back. So we have a concrete wall. Now to finish off this design, we're going to come up to our first floor ceiling, press Control down twice, tap the Alt key, select our new created slab, Control up, and right click to show us trace reference for our first floor. Now I'm simply just going to drag a box potentially 7 meters to the left, run that all the way to the back of our house so we have a feature blade wall, run it all the way back and finish it there. Now if we come into our 3D, we'll see that our house is starting to take form. I don't really like that that's way too high up. So I'm going to drop the bottom of that to 2745, and I'm also going to drop the height of this wall to the underside of that slab. So as you can see now, we're creating this wraparound ceiling effect that we can hide our roof behind here as well. So if we come back to our first ceiling, we're going to see that we have our roof hidden here. I'm going to hold the Alt button on my trace reference, which allows me to actually use that wall below. And I'm going to draw a small little box basically on top of that wall that is on the first floor. Alt G, Command T, opens up our Storey settings. I only want that to be about 600 millimeters high so I can hide a roof under it. Now to create our roof, I'm going to go to our roof tool, and you always want to start with your pitching point at the lowest point, which means coming over to this side of the wall, starting on the inside of this leaf and clicking on the actual inside, coming all the way across, drawing our roof, and then most likely extending that another 110 mil back. Now it's created a very, very big roof that doesn't need to be at that angle. Let's just go 1 degree, a secret roof. We can also delete that last little bit of that 600 millimeter upstand. So now if we look at this house from the front, from the street, you don't see the roof. It's hidden behind a small little 600 mil upstand, and we have this nice cantilevering concrete looking facade. Now, instead of creating an actual roof in this section, what I'm simply going to do is reduce that floor. Click on this floor here, go to our add polygon, and then simply extend our concrete roof across and extend our concrete roof back. So what we'll effectively do from a construction point of view is that'll be a concrete roof. We'll do a balustrade back there and hide that away so nobody can access that area. But that way we don't have to ruin and spoil the simple minimalistic design that we've created so far. To finish this off, I do want to come back into my ground floor, go up one level and select that concrete floor, then go back to my ground floor and simply draw in our concrete slab at the bottom. So we tie that back in completely. Now it probably doesn't need to be that long, probably can go back in to only about 3 meters instead of the full size. So we have a sweeping S look. That could be a step up to a little platform, a little tree, whatever we decide to do in the elevation design. Now let's focus on this actual elevation of this 2D house. First, we're going to change the materials of this blade wall. So if we open up the settings by pressing Command T and overriding all of the model settings to concrete, let's change it to concrete light 23 for the time being. I'm going to do the exact same thing for these concrete slabs, clicking OK, and also the same thing for this concrete blade wall over here. So now we have our concrete wraparound roof and blade walls. Now these two walls up here, I want them to be in a nice dark timber. So let's make them a vertical walnut and finish that off. The remainder of the house, by pressing Alt G, I'm going to paint all that titanium white. So it's a nice harsh contrast between the concrete and the white render, and we have our dark wood up here as well. Now let's come into our ground floor and start adding some openings and some elevations. First, I'm going to go to our door, click on my door settings up here, which you can also access by pressing Command T. I'm going to search for a nice large pivot door. So ArchiCAD has a pivot door 25 here. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I hate this orange line here. So let's go override pen, simply making them black, overriding both the pen type settings. And let's make this door about 1800 wide and 2.4 high. So it's a very nice large door. By clicking on the 3D, we can see what it looks like. Personally, I don't really want it to be a glass door. I do want it to be solid, and I want it to be that walnut color to match the above of what we created. So let's drop down to our model attributes and change this wood grain to our walnut vertical. I also want to change the frame settings. So we're going to come down to our model attributes in fixtures and fittings and change that to just paint ivory black on both sides. So pressing OK, I'm going to drop my main entry right here, pivoting inside. Coming back to 3D, we'll see we've created a nice black pivot frame door. I'm actually going to extend that all the way up to the underside of the concrete so it looks really, really modern and really, really sleek. And then coming back into our ground floor, I'm going to press Control D, drag it all the way to the edge so it creates that formal entry space. Next, we're going to start putting some windows in. So let's go to our window tool, window settings up the top. I'm just going to simply create a simple window here. So sticking with the ArchiCAD 25 window, that's absolutely fine. All I'm going to do is change those model attributes to a black frame so it matches what we've created with our door. Keeping the ivory clear glass, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to drop that in right there and align it with the edge of my door. Again, pressing Command T because I hate that orange pen. I forgot to change these two settings here. Getting rid of the orange because I can't stand it. Coming back into 3D and expanding our window so it's a full side light next to our pivot door. Finish off this ground floor. I'm going to come back in again, hold the Alt button, select that window downstairs, drop it randomly in that space, Control or Command T to open up the settings, and let's start from the beginning and change a few things. So I want this to be a much wider window. Let's call it 2.1 for the time being, and we'll adjust the height in 3D. I then want to change the actual style of this window. So we're just going to come across to the HV grid sash. Let's call it 3x3. So it creates a nice grid pattern, black frames, and we're going to drop that in right there. Back to our 3D, we can see that we have that extra slab, so it doesn't need to be that size, but I do want to extend it the whole width of this concrete slab here. So now we have a large black window here. We have one large window next to our door, which I'm going to copy simply two identical windows on this front bedroom. Coming back to 3D, we have two very large windows at the front. Finally, coming up to our first floor, I'm going to go back into my window settings and find a sliding door. So let's type in sliding. I'm going to use this sliding door XO here, which is a little bit wider than usual, simply changing those model settings again. So we have a black frame all the way around, pressing OK and dropping that window in here. Again, forgot about those orange lines, so let's just dive quickly back into that. Get rid of those orange lines so we don't have to deal with the ugliness of that. And in 3D, we can see that is terribly unproportionate. And just so we can see the timber on both sides, I'm gonna drag that back 400 mil from here, and I'm also going to drag that back in 400 mil from there. And then in 3D, we have our wraparound timber, we have our black frame, we have a concrete house, and we basically have our 2-story architectural home in ArchiCAD 25 done in a matter of minutes. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you learned something today. If you did, make sure you smash that like button down below. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or anything in between, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I do reply to absolutely everybody as often as I can, but like I already said, that's all for me today. So like always, I'll see you next Monday.